folks, this is Ardwulf. Welcome. This is the introductory video, hopefully brief, of a new playthrough series of this game, Roads to Moscow by GMT Games and designer Vance von Borries. Now, the scenario that I'm going to play, I've got it kind of all set up, or well, I've got the initial setup taken care of. I have not done the German setup yet because the Germans actually enter on turn 1. And their objectives for this scenario, this is scenario 3, it's called the Tank Brigades. And I chose it because it's the only less than one map scenario in the game. It's a little short at 3 turns, but that said, the Germans have a lot to do in those 3 turns. Essentially what they have to do is accumulate a certain number of victory points. And the number of victory points that they need is on this victory point schedule. These 3 towns give them a substantial number of victory points, and they also get victory points for eliminating Soviet steps. But Soviet victory points come from eliminating German steps, so that counts as well, and I believe at the end you just subtract the total number of Soviet victory points from the total number of German victory points, and that's the actual victory point total to determine what level of victory, if any, the Germans have achieved. So, briefly, you can't really see the whole map. It's actually good for filming this, but bad for this introductory video. I've got the whole map under plexiglass. I've got a little bit better lighting. It's not optimal. I've got a light off here because otherwise there'd be a huge amount of glare on this plexiglass. I've got a couple of improvements in place, namely that the plexiglass is taped down so that I won't accidentally shift the entire world out from under the opposing forces here. The Soviets are laid out as they pretty much are. There are no Soviet reinforcements in this scenario. And there's only 3 turns anyway, so the Germans do get a few reinforcements on the second turn. There are several Soviet strong points. You can see they're right up here on the line. These are the German entry hexes. So the Germans will be coming in directly against these forces. And they have quite a bit of forces coming in. There's a significant number of forces. I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera, but I've got the setup cards set up over here. A big formation of units from Das Reich, the 2nd SS Panzer Division, are coming in, as well as some units from 10th Panzer. And then on 12 a.m. we get some more units from 10th Panzer coming in. This is a chit pull game. So the number of chits is fairly small. Each faction has its own pool of chits, and I've already randomized these. So you can actually just kind of randomize them and stack them up together like they were a deck of cards. The Germans have, so the Soviets have 2 formations. And when you pull, I'll do this with the Germans, when you pull an activation marker, I can do this with the Germans because on the first turn, the Germans automatically have the initiative, and they get to pick what activation marker they can use. So basically, the Germans have 2 activation markers for each unit, 2 for the 2nd SS Panzer Division and 2 for the 10th Panzer Division. And which one they choose will determine which one they can activate during that particular phase or segment. Now, on the first turn, the Germans can pick what they want, or they can do what's called a combined activation, which normally I think you have to roll for. That's something that is probably not going to come up in a 3-turn game, except on the first turn, so I'll probably just choose to activate both the SS guys and the 10th Panzer on the first turn. So I don't particularly care that these aren't entirely randomized anymore. So we'll be getting to the first turn, of course, in the first episode. So activation markers, say I pull 10th Panzer, then I can move and fight with all of 10th Panzer's units. If later in the turn I pull the SS Das Reich, I can then move and activate them. And there's a reasonably involved sequence of play somewhere in one of the books. The scenario is a little short at 3 turns, which made me sort of reluctant to choose to play this one in particular. There's also a 5-turn scenario, which is on the Mtsensk side of the map, but it does use the whole map, and this was convenient because it only uses half the map, roughly, and I can put all my player aid cards under the plexiglass over here. I just have this one piece of plexi, so which I will not hesitate to write on if it comes up. Weather is random. That is determined based on the turns. It's actually on the turn record track. I'll show that in detail when we get to it. That will determine the weather for the turns. German supply is a problem. They do have some supply trucks that come in. We'll see how that works. There's a relatively sophisticated supply system in this game where you actually have to flip these supply units in order to activate to do certain types of actions. So we will get to all that, and I will be, of course, learning as I go. So if you're a veteran of the previous playthrough series of When Eagles Fight, you can expect me to make a lot of mistakes in this one too. The other nice thing with the 3-turn game is I don't anticipate that this is going to be more than 3 episodes. Not sure how long those episodes will be. So you'll get to digest Roads to Moscow in a relatively constrained format in terms of video, and I will get to learn the rules also in a fairly constrained format. Now, just me playing through this scenario does not preclude me playing through a larger scenario later on. That could happen. I actually had my eye on the full Mozhaisk scenario, which is the biggest scenario in the game, which takes up this entire map, and the city of Mozhaisk is covered up over here, but that's the ultimate objective of the Germans. There is some air. There's quite a bit of artillery in play. There's a variety of units, as is the case with all the scenarios in the games in this series that I've seen. So I anticipate that there will be a good mix of rules getting used, and we should be able to see a fairly comprehensive picture of the game system throughout this series. So I hope you will enjoy it. Please stay tuned for Episode 1, which will be coming along shortly.